Okay, I will check again. It's on the second IACATS channel, or
Yeah, but don't even bother to check yet because I have to change the description. If you even
okay.
start to think about sharing it at this point, it's going to be wrong on so many levels.
It's not even showing up there though yet. So
yeah. Okay. So now I'm editing the description, and it's not going to be about a viral video.
Okay.
Although viruses might be in the news.
Yeah, maybe viruses will stimulate a viral video about a virus. I mean, that's all I can
Viruses
think of.
in the news is going to be part of the description, so I'm going to say that. How changing medical practices affect our treatment of viruses.
That's an interesting point.
And then I'm going to also talk about nepotism.
Okay, sounds good.
How employment practices have changed to create a bias against nepotism. Okay, so these seem like different topics completely, but they are sort of related in the sense that we're talking about changes to the system, and then changes to the system will change how the system reacts to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'm going into the tags. Medical practices, treating a virus, antibiotics, which are now not considered good for a virus, but used to be used all the time. Let's see, what else? Let's talk about fever reducer, mortality, and now nepotism, which doesn't sound like it's at all related. And then you also wanted to talk about maybe the person that you voted for in the Libertarian primary.
Yeah, I will share that, which I think basically, I know for a fact, it's basically just a vote of confidence. It really doesn't impact who's going to be selected. But I think what we should also be reflective upon is it's a given that whoever's the incumbent's going to be pretty much nominated to the presidency. But let's be honest, like the way that conventions are often ran, like with the major parties, they say, oh, it's about the primaries and the person that has the most support is going to be the person nominated. But I think we know that's not really always the case. At least the libertarians are honest about it. Like they have a clear-cut platform, like these are the people, like you can explain that a little bit more, but I would like to talk about that too. Would you like to discuss that?
Yes. So, and LP candidates, I'll just add that to our title. And I'm saving it. Would you like to refresh and see whether?
Yeah, I'm going to check right now and see if it's ready to go. Okay, so I see that it says viruses in the news, and so it looks like we're ready to share it this time.
Okay. All right.
Which is good. I like the Zoom software. It's pretty neat. Like maybe we should have like a live stream on how to use Zoom, like now that you have more familiarity with it. That was another thing I was going to say, that we could share, what you've learned about it over the last year. That might be an interesting live stream one of these days.
Yeah, it might be, but I still haven't learned everything there is to know about it. I'm sure that I'm not using it to capacity. Because obviously we haven't even started with a seminar. I mean, remember, we have the capacity to invite the people to be students with us and to learn something with us. And I did have an idea that I was going to teach maybe biblical Hebrew or something like that, but I haven't gone anywhere near putting that into practice.
Yeah, exactly. But it's good to know that there's this software, if you want to utilize it for those purposes, just for a future plan.
Well, most people know about it. Actually, a lot of people in business have been using Zoom for a very long time. And I
Yeah,
think,
business, yeah, but general
I think,
people don't.
yeah, and I think YouTube must have made a deal with Zoom because I think that Google Hangouts was actually competing with Zoom and it was free.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's not free. And a lot of us are just turning to Zoom because we have absolutely no choice in the matter.
No, we don't. But here's another question I have absolutely no idea. Maybe somebody could let us know in the comments. Do you think maybe some of the people that used to work on Google Hangouts were recruited by Zoom? That I'm just curious because that's happened with some tech companies where they recruit people from another. It's just a curious question I have.
Right. Yeah. And I had some bad news today that the state of Indiana is now in a state of emergency because there was one case of coronavirus in Indianapolis, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I have relatives in Bloomington,
Oh,
Indiana, so I'm concerned about them. And I did share a sort of visual about how the coronavirus compares to the common flu, the ordinary flu
yeah.
that we get every year in terms of mortality rate. I shared this on my Instagram. Would you like to do a screen share of that just for a moment? We could
Yeah,
talk.
I could go to Instagram and definitely share that.
And meanwhile, I can see if I can share this live stream on my other channel.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. That sounds good to me. Okay, oh yes, I think I see it right now. So I'll go into the screen share. Let's see. Okay, oh yes, I think I see it right now. So
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to share.
no, it's okay. So here's the flu versus COVID-19 death rate by age.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah, what they're saying.
The screen share.
Oh dear. What they're saying is that if you're an infant, a very small baby, then that there's actually no chance, it's even smaller than the flu, that you will be hurt by the COVID-19. It's kind of hard to see here because they only start from age 10 to 19 on the COVID side. Do you see that?
Yeah, I do see. That's interesting because we just don't have enough information about it yet, correct?
Well, I don't know. I think they're saying that very small children, the very small, are not being hurt by the COVID-19 virus, whereas that's not true about the flu. There's a very small percentage of infants and children under the age of 4 that do in fact die of the flu.
Yes, that's interesting.
But apparently we don't have any documented cases of babies and small children in those age groups who die of the coronavirus. So in that sense, this is good news for babies, if they're, it means that this disease is kind of sparing the very young, if this is true.
If this is true, I'm kind of concerned though, because it looks like the elderly population has less immunity to COVID-19. But that's kind of true with the flu as well, because plus 65 it goes up, but it just goes up. It's a big jump.
Well, I mean, what you have to see is, yes, people do die of the flu, but even the very elderly, 65 and up, and they're not even, they're not dividing them into 80-year-olds and so on.
That's true. You're right.
It's less than 1% who die of that. That's still very, very small. And when you look at the 80 plus people, it's 14.8%, almost 15% of them. So it's a huge difference.
Wow. That's alarming. And then I haven't researched a lot about with coronavirus, but I heard there's multiple strains of it, and that's
Yes.
going to be a concern as well. Do you want me to take this out of screen share now?
Yes, yeah, we can do that. So here's the thing, it does matter who you are. And this is something that has been going around. Those people who just want to say, don't panic, but don't panic, are saying, well, people die of the flu every year, and you didn't die, and I didn't die, and, our neighbors didn't die. So it's same thing for COVID-19 or coronavirus, novel coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. But and then there are other people who are saying, look, there are billions of people who are dying of hunger every year, and nobody's making that a public emergency. But the thing is, you and I and our neighbors and our parents and our children are not at risk for dying of hunger because there's a very simple cure. You eat something and you don't die.
Yes, exactly. And also too, if we're going to talk about that, we can also talk about, well, this the cost of living. Like, if you're really concerned about people having enough money, why are you making the cost of living go so high? Why are you wanting to raise more taxes that are going to maybe make people have to choose between money and house and food?
Well, here's the thing. When they raise taxes and they say that it's for the sake of the people who are going to otherwise die of hunger, they're pitting us against each other, because if you're in the category where you have enough food and they're taking away some of your food to feed somebody else against your will, then you are, they're pitting us against each other. So it's natural that we wouldn't want to listen to somebody saying people are dying of hunger. If we're not dying of hunger, we don't want to give our food away, without our consent. And usually that's going to be frittered away by the government, and it will never get to the people who are hungry anyway.
I just think if we had fewer taxes, we live in a country that produces enough food. We would all be okay if we were able to go out, make a living, not worry about paying so many taxes. I feel like that's the biggest issue, really.
Right. Okay. But I mean, there's other stuff we could say about people who die every year. Well, we're all mortal. We're all going to die. And every year people just die of old age. It's always called something else, like heart failure or whatever disease they happen to have died of. But we know that once you get over the age of 100, your time is on this planet is limited, and we may not know what you're going to die of. But by the time you're 120, you probably will have died. That's just something that happens. And humanity has known about this for eon, for as long as we've existed. We've known about it. So you could say, well, why aren't you worried about that? Well, because that's inevitable. It's going to happen to all of us in our turn, in our own time. And we don't have to take care of that. It's just something that happens.
Yeah, that's just nature of life, mortality, really.
Right. So to say don't panic about the coronavirus because we're all going to die eventually anyway, I think there's some kind of logical.
No, I feel like we need to be concerned. I don't know why they're underplaying, like why people are underplaying it. Because
they are because of the economy. Because remember what Brian Welch told us.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want it to make an economic, but it's already going to. Like, have you heard like hand sanitizer, like cleaners? Like right now, there's a scarcity of them actually because people have bought them all up, and they're saying, well, from some suppliers you can't even buy more until May, and there's like no guarantee really, and the prices are going up. Yeah.
I don't take that very seriously. Actually, Brian Welch is communicating with us. You might did you share this on Facebook? You might want to let him know that we're talking. He could leave some comments on it because he seems to be active at this time, and he is.
Okay, I can check because I was just looking to see if anybody was watching the live stream, but right now, like he
just commented on something on Facebook, I think, is what he did. But anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
So let's see what his comment was. Okay, so he's saying that the economy added jobs in February. That unemployment went from 3.6
Where did I share this?
Anyway, so he said that gold took a dump and the market was even climbing, but then all progress stops, markets started to tank and gold recover. Somebody or some group just got burned. Okay.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay. What do you make of this?
Well, I don't understand what happens with gold. All I know is I can never count on gold doing what I think gold will do, because in a crisis, gold is supposed to go up. It's just supposed to go up. And, but in my experience, my whole lifetime, whenever we predicted in my family that gold was going up, it went up maybe for a little bit, and then it went right back down, like somebody had flooded the market with gold so that the price would not go up. You know, because gold is the commodity that really wants to be a currency. And our government does not want gold to ever be the currency, because otherwise the dollar will be in trouble because it's not backed by anything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's probably why we shouldn't went off the gold standard, but hey.
Yeah, so what happened was there was this really big economic panic for and now my internet connection is unstable. Can you still hear me? It just told me
I can hear you, but here's the thing. I didn't even see Brian's like notification. So I think that's interesting.
Well, it wasn't on YouTube. It was on Facebook.
I looked on Facebook and I didn't get it. So that's another thing. I don't think I'm getting all my notifications. That's all I was going to say about that.
Okay. Well, anyway, what happened was there was this little, you know, the markets panicked because they realized the coronavirus was making stuff from China not arrive in the US, so we couldn't buy the stuff, you know, and even things supposedly made in the US are really, all the parts are made in China.
Yeah.
So everybody panicked for a while, and then they stopped panicking, and the Fed lowered interest rates, and that really, it always bums me out when they do that. They're doing this so that we won't have an economic crisis. But for anybody who has money, and I'm living on savings, I don't have an income to really live on. That's the time when we get back all the inflation. If we could just bump up the interest rates a little, then my money would be worth more again. But no, they will never do that. They are making my money be worth less so I can buy less stuff. And they always do that, and it makes me very sad.
Yeah, messing with the economy, it's not good.
Yeah. So they're setting us up for inflation so that people won't panic. But it's not good for the elderly unless we just die off, and then we don't need to use our money. You know,
and then you have so many different, it's funny too, like, because when somebody passes away, I don't think the person that inherits the money even gets the full value of it due to taxes, right? Due to estate taxes and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just want to say there's a problem with Facebook on my end because I still don't have a notification from Brian, and I find that kind of silly.
Okay, well, anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too far off topic because that was the economic topic that Brian knows about that I don't so much.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not a medical expert either, and I did try to invite a medical expert to talk to us about this, but they're too busy right now. You can understand.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about changing medical practices. I mentioned it the other night, but I talked to some other people who are my generation, and we know that way back in the late 60s, early 70s, if somebody came down with a serious respiratory infection, and it didn't really matter if it was called a cold or the flu, you know, that wasn't the issue. And nobody went around testing exactly which strain of the flu it was or which strain of a cold it was. They just determined, you know, they wouldn't do this if you had an allergy or if you were suffering from autoimmune stuff like asthma. They won't do it then. But if you had an infection of any sort, viral or microbial, they would just suggest that you get penicillin right away. And their favorite way in the United States to do this is they would give you an intramuscular shot of penicillin. You know, usually they would ask you to take your pants down and they would give it to you in the butt. And it was kind of strong. I'll tell you the truth. In my family, we said, no, thank you. We will take an oral version of that. We don't really need a shot. But most people did get the shot, and it helped them to bounce right back, you know?
When I asked my family about things like that, I don't think we ever did that, but we're kind of more on the holistic side. Like we got our immunizations, but we didn't do that. Like,
I know, but I mean, that's if you went to the doctor and you did what the doctor said.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, my parents didn't want to intervene so much. They weren't holistic exactly, but they had an ounce of you know, a feeling that you don't have to overdo with the medicine.
Yeah, overdo it. Like you were just more like you wanted to be cautious about the recommendation. Exactly.
Yeah, right. But sometime around the 80s, the doctors were taught a new spiel. So if you went to the doctor and he determined that you had a cold or even the flu, he would say, that's a virus. Now, I can't give you anything for that because antibiotics are only against bacteria. They don't work if you have a virus. Did you ever hear that from a doctor?
Recently with my dental issues, like a few years back when I had a root canal, they gave me one round of antibiotics. They said, well, we can only give you this because they're very strong and they can cause more bad repercussions than good. So they were very tempered, and they would only give it to you like if your face was swollen from a abscessed tooth and you had to get a root canal. And that was the only time I was ever given antibiotics.
Well, that's really funny because, yeah, the dentist got in on the act, but okay, so let me tell you, I've always had bad teeth and I had to have cavities filled by the time I was 4 years old. Okay. And part of that was in Israel. And in Israel, not only do we not take antibiotics when we had our teeth worked on, we didn't even get painkillers. So it was really excruciatingly painful for me to have a dentist drilling on me without Novocaine.
Wow.
You know, and in the United States, they gave you Novocaine, so you didn't have to deal with that. But yeah, at some point when I started to need some root canals, some of the dentists wanted to give me antibiotics in advance of the treatment. And I thought that was weird because they're supposed to go in with a topical antibiotic into the area where you might have an infection, but they're not supposed to put that in your entire body because you know exactly where the infection is in the case of a dental issue. So I thought they were going way overboard with prescribing antibiotics for something like that. But right now, here's what's happening. Children are dying of the flu. Okay. In my area in Missouri, 2 adjoining counties, I think, not the same county, had 2 little girls. I think one of them was 10 years old, die of something that appears to be the flu. And they died at home. I mean, this is the thing, is that they were not even rushed to a hospital. And why? Because when you bring your child to the doctor and the doctor determines your child has the flu, the doctor won't prescribe anything. They'll say, just go and get some rest. So if it gets worse, and you have to understand that if you don't have like insurance that pays 100%, every time you go to see the doctor, that costs $100. So to go see the doctor to be told for $100 that the doctor can't do anything for you, that doesn't seem reasonable, does it?
No, and most people can't afford that. That's reality. I don't think most
people. Right. So by the time they realized that their child was not breathing, they were at home and it was too late and they were calling an ambulance or they were calling for help or they were trying to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and the child died. And that's something that in the 60s, I don't think that ever happened.
Wow.
I mean, here's the thing, if you go far back in time, the time of my parents and my grandparents, yes, children used to die all the time. They used to die because they got a fever and they weren't able to reduce the fever, before aspirin was available. And the fever is actually your body's response to an invader. So the fever isn't caused by the disease. It's not caused by the virus or the bacteria. It's caused by your immune system.
Trying to fight off.
Yeah. And sometimes, it's like fighting to the death. You say, yeah, that virus is going to die, but so am I. That's so we learned that if the fever got too high, we have to reduce it. We found ways to reduce it. And antibiotics were not available until about World War II. Isn't that right, Julia?
That's what I think I've heard. I can look right now and just see.
Okay. I think they were called sulfa drugs, SULFA, sulfa drugs, before everybody started calling them antibiotics.
Interesting. Because I've never, to be honest with you, I've never looked up much about the history of antibiotics. That's interesting.
So when I was growing up, everybody was telling me how lucky I was that I was living in the era of modern medicine, that we have antibiotics, so nobody has to die just because they got a cold. Nobody has to die just because they got a fever. That's what I was told.
But now it seems like it's kind of gone the other way, that people are starting to die from flu and fever and cold. And like in the 60s, you didn't hear, like I wasn't alive in the 60s, so I can't say, but you just didn't hear of these cases, correct?
I never heard of anybody. No, I mean, you didn't even hear about that many children with cancer. I mean, you heard of some kids who had leukemia, but I actually had the mumps, I had the measles, and I didn't even hear of any people dying of that. And again, whenever you have any of these diseases, there could be a secondary infection. But if you got a secondary infection, we did have antibiotics and we did have fever reducers and things like that, that made mortality from those childhood diseases much less likely. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it reduced the probability that you could die from like a basic flu, basic cold, but now they're not prescribing these things. So it seems we're hearing more of these cases with infant mortality to flus.
Right. Yeah. And it just, I don't know, perhaps the doctors aren't telling us and the antibiotics are no longer viable, but that's not what they're telling us.
I just have heard like that they have determined that antibiotics can do more harm than good when overprescribed. All I know is that I did want a few more antibiotics when my face swelled up from the infection from the root canal, and I was told no, I could only have one round of the antibiotics and that was it, and I couldn't have more. And I thought that was kind of problematic. They told me I could have more pain medicine if I wanted. But I was like, it's not the pain, it was the swelling. I just wanted the swelling to go down. So they basically said, no, this is all you get. Once it's gone, we're not going to prescribe anymore. That was one of my few interactions with ever needing an antibiotic. So
yeah. So I'm not one of those people who love antibiotics. I do realize they do a number on the microbes in your gut. I wouldn't be surprised if the reason that I currently need to watch what I eat may have something to do with the number of antibiotics that I did get as a child. But I also didn't die of the flu, and I had the flu a number of times.
No, you definitely didn't die of the flu. Well, here's the thought. Does Amber O'Hearn ever talk about antibiotics? Maybe sometime in the future. I don't know. Like we could ask her. I wonder if she has some thoughts about this.
Okay, well, we could ask her. I'm sure she has thoughts, but I would love to have somebody with a medical degree or a certification so that we aren't just told that we're nuts, you know?
Okay. Well, I personally okay, I'm just going to say I don't have any background in medical science. I
Right.
can't tell you anything. Like,
Neither do I. Neither
yeah.
do I.
Well, I mean, I think you've actually researched it. Like, to be honest with you, I didn't really know much about the history of antibiotics until I just began to look up penicillin a little bit more right now because it's just not something I've really researched. It's interesting, but I just don't research that as much. I think you have a little bit more of a knowledge about this subject than I do. So I don't have a lot to say because I can't say anything valid on this subject really.
Well, I mean, they smuggled sulfa drugs into the camp in Our Lady of Haiphong. Let me show you the book. Hey,
That's interesting. Yeah.
my book. So this is about a camp in Shandong,
Yeah.
in China, and the people there were practically starving, but the resistance managed to get some sulfa drugs smuggled into the camp to save people's lives.
There was a similar type of story. I can't remember the name of the movie I saw, but it was about the group of Dutch women that were taken into a Japanese internment camp. But a Chinese woman that brought in similar drugs, like she was actually executed for bringing medicine into a camp and trying to help people.
Right, that happens, and we have to watch out because actually what's been happening in China, mainland China right now, is if somebody is diagnosed with the novel coronavirus, they are sent to what is basically a death camp where all the people that they have determined have it, and there aren't enough supplies, and hygiene is not good in those places. So basically they're sent there to die, and then they are cremated.
China kind of has a problem. They don't want any bad information to come out about what's going on in their country because this is not the first time. Like, I definitely don't have a medical background, but just reading articles about when STDs started on the rise again, they were suppressing that information because they said it would ruin their image. Like, they don't want any negative health information, but it's going to come out anyway. It's like they're trying to suppress things that you can't really suppress anymore. Just as North Korea never wanted any photographs or video inside their country, but it started happening because people started sneaking in and they couldn't control everything anymore. So now they've started to allow a few like state sanctioned photographers. But I think this information is going to get out. And we already know that China's had about 2,000 deaths from the coronavirus, correct? And about 80,000 infections.
Yeah,
that's what I read. Yeah.
Something like that. Yes. So yeah, no, as far as North Korea is concerned, people are getting executed for coming down with the virus, I suppose, because it's seen as a strong indication they must have had some kind of contact with the outside.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of a scary thought that this could happen, that they suppress information, but even, I mean, we might not be suppressing it to the degree here in the US, but if we underplay it and say, oh, coronavirus is just like the flu and it's no problem, and then we go around calling it the corona flu, that's probably not a good idea. I don't think we should do that. I don't think we should underplay what it really is.
Yeah.
In our own country, like to just say, oh, it's nothing to worry about, because we don't know. It's already showing that quite a few people are dying in higher percentage rates than with the
and we're all susceptible to it. So the reason we care is because we don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen to me and my family, to the neighbors. I just don't know. There are some things that we know are not going to touch us, but only touch other people. And that's part of the weird way in which globalism and universalism get people confused. For instance, people will ask me, "Are you for, I don't know, child abuse?" Of course, I'm not for child abuse. They'll say, "Oh, good, then you're for protective children's protective services." And I say, "No."
Actually, no, child
Yeah,
protective services are really bad. In fact, a lot of people that have worked in social work said, how all the problems with child protective services because they determine, oh, the parent is really bad, so we're going to put them in a foster situation. And the foster situation is really horrible because a lot of the people who go into that know that they get a check from the state and they treat those children not so well, really, just to get that money. Like, I've heard multiple stories about abuse in the foster system, and all they do
right.
is put the kid in another home if the abuse is detected, but they don't really crack down on, I don't think that that's the answer. I think child protective services have done more harm than good. They've split. Well, if you
Right.
ever watch old episodes of Unsolved Mysteries where a person's looking for a lost parent because, oh, it goes back to a story about not having food, like this family barely had any food. So rather than like wait for the mom to try and get a job, they took all her children away and they put them up into foster care. They took her family away, basically.
Yeah. So here's what I'm saying. The one way that each of us, if we have children, can protect our children is to make sure to vote that each parent gets to decide what happens to his own kids. Because that way, parents care about their kids. They may not be perfect, they may make mistakes, they may be poor, but they still want to protect their own kids. And by and large, that works better.
And it's kind of sad too because I hate to say it, like you have a lot of people, they say they're liberal and they care about the poor, but it's actually some liberal people that I've heard say some of the worst things about poor people, saying that certain people shouldn't be allowed to have children. I've heard that conversation from some more affluent liberal people saying, well, they shouldn't have children because they're poor. Like, I've heard discussions like that, and I don't see, that's not very helpful. And it's like it's almost advocating eugenics. Really
Yeah,
interesting. I
that,
don't know.
that is what they're doing. And when they're not advocating eugenics directly like that, they're advocating a re-education of children so that they won't resemble their parents because they'll never see their parents. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, well, with the
Like
foster,
education.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, there are issues, and when years ago, I guess I didn't really want to see these things, but you kind of see it more now. It's unfortunate,
yeah.
but I
So
don't want to get off topic because I know we're talking mostly about the concerns with the
yeah.
medical issue.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Do we have any comments? Because as I said, I'm not a medical expert. I just wanted to bring out my concerns and my
Mhm.
memories about how medicine has changed over time
No,
during my
medicine's
lifetime.
definitely. And the thing we have to remember too about medicine is, yes, like medicine, like people sometimes go to the doctor and they save your life, but we also have to remember that medicine changes over time. So something that they thought was correct 10 years ago might not be correct 10 years later.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I would be a little cautious with that and ask, well, why isn't it correct? And please explain that. I mean, this
Yeah, no,
whole,
no, I know what you're saying. Like with the penicillin thing, you're concerned. Yeah, I
yeah, no, no, no.
understand.
I mean, when we were talking about this briefly with Brian Welch, and he said, oh, well, they didn't know about the difference between a virus and a bacteria back in the 60s. And I think that's not true. Of course, they knew the difference. Um, So I don't actually believe that they suddenly in the 1980s discovered that um, that penicillin doesn't work against a virus. I don't. I mean, I imagine that's not exactly what happened.
Okay. Well, I
Uh,
mean, I can't say either way,
yeah,
but
yeah. I can't say either way either, but it seems to me that at the time they said better safe than sorry. They're probably going to get a bacterial infection because this person has bronchitis. He has inflammation of the bronchial passages right now, and that usually leads to bacterial infection, which leads
mhm.
to pneumonia. which leads to death. So rather than wait until all that happens, we're going to give this penicillin right now, and it won't happen. And so when they get over the virus, they won't be dead of something else, you know?
No, I
And
know. Yeah.
okay. And right now, you know, when they're saying these people are dying of the coronavirus, well, we don't know what their final death is of. You understand?
Yeah, no, exactly. We're not sure. It could be that the coronavirus compromised their immunity to where they, I don't know, picked up, but we're not sure.
Right. Right. So I'm not saying that I know. What I'm saying is that the attitude of the medical profession has changed because at some point they were warned that they were overusing antibiotics, and that was maybe creating some strains of bacteria that were resistant to the antibiotics that we had. So in their overall, you know, their general desire to save humanity from strains of bacteria that are resistant to our antibiotics, they started prescribing antibiotics less. But what I'm seeing here is over the system, you know, not just one doctor or one hospital, but a systemic change in the attitude toward saving individual patients. And it's almost like they're saying, we're not going to do everything we can for this patient, because if we do, later on, bacterial strains will develop that will be resistant to antibiotics. Or alternatively, if I'm wrong about this, maybe that's already happened. And that's why they're not prescribing antibiotics. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I see what you're saying. I mean, one thing I do remember reading about was the whole antibacterial soap change. Because back in the 80s, when I was a kid, they used to push the antibacterial soap. They said that was really good for cleaning everything. And then they found out that antibacterial soap made new bacteria resistant to it, and new bacteria were showing up. And there was a lady, I guess, that was banned from the McDonald's play place because she took some samples and she found these new pathogens that were showing up. Like, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, what was actually in the antibacterial soap? Can you tell me, Julia? What was in it?
You know, I don't remember exactly what was in it. I just remember reading about that. Was it tricycline, maybe? Let's see.
I don't know. Let's find out.
I think it might have been. Yeah, let's see. I think it was soap had, okay. So, but they still have some types of antibacterial soaps on the market.
Well, I mean, you know, I have two things that I use to sanitize if I think something is infected. And one of the things that I use is rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, rubbing alcohol. Just use that.
Yeah. And I also use iodine. Did you know that iodine is a powerful antibacterial?
I've heard that, but I've never purchased it. So maybe that's a good alternative for people that are obsessed with like cleaning everything. Because I think those cleaning wipes and that Lysol spray, I hate the smell of it. Like, it makes me feel ill. Yeah. It's really horrible. I don't think okay, we can have a medical professional disagree with me here, but I don't think spraying that in the air and letting it settle over things is going to kill anything. But that's just my take.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, my approach is I'm basically isolated most of the time. And but if I'm worried about bacteria, that's what I use. I use the alcohol and the iodine.
Yeah, well, those are good options. Now, here's the thing about when they tell everybody that they have to, oh yeah, it was tricycline in some of the older, and I think they may have taken that out because I guess the FDA had some concerns about it. Okay. So anyway, to be honest with you though, when they say everybody should be isolated, to me, that's just not helpful, because if you can be isolated, that's great. But it's just like, if you live in Southern California, how are you going to be isolated? How are you going to stay away from people all day? It's not possible. And then they keep saying we should be isolated. What? Give us a better solution, everybody. Like, it's not possible. It's not feasible. Although the day after the scare, it seemed like fewer people were going public that day, but then the next day everything went back to normal. So I don't know.
Well, I think if you're living in the city, isolation is pretty much impossible. I live in the country. I do go to Walmart, so I'm certainly not isolated completely from other people. I do have 2 people who come to my house. Charla, who is Bo's friend with the bananas, and Jessica, who brings milk. And Jessica didn't come this week because she had the flu.
No, that makes sense.
But you know, when I was growing up, we weren't ashamed to isolate people even in our house. So here's what it was. My mother has always been really hardy, very strong, hardly ever came down with colds and things. And she was our stay-at-home caretaker for all of us. And my father, who was the breadwinner, was more given to respiratory infections. So if one of us was sick, you know, like one of the children, we were not allowed to touch him.
Yeah, of course. That's good common sense.
Yeah, and we didn't share glasses. We didn't share plates, and everything was sterilized, you know, with boiling water after it was washed. So, and I know that wasn't that way in other families. In other families, you know, people were always hugging on each other, no matter how sick they were. But in our household, it was considered okay to isolate someone until they got better.
No, and it should still be that way. That is one thing that I do agree with. Like, even if you live in the city, if you just go to the hospital because you had pneumonia and the flu, was that the right time of day to go pay all your bills and be in public? It wasn't. You should have went home. Like, but people do that all the time. They're like, yeah, I'm sicker than ever, and here I am, and we're like, oh, okay. And then that time a couple of years ago when the people had the measles, they got out of the hospital, they went to the chocolate shop, they went to Target, they were living it up. They did not isolate themselves. I'll tell you that.
No, the way we lived it up, if we were cold, if we had a cold, even just a cold, if I had a cold when I was a little girl, I was told to stay in bed. But and I couldn't even watch TV because my bed was not anywhere near a television set, but I could read a book. I could maybe be pampered in other ways, maybe be given a soda to drink by the bedside, stuff like that, you know. So we were pampered, but it was different.
Then that's better, right? You're getting over your cold. You're not out there spreading it around.
Right.
That, I think, okay, if you are really sick, you shouldn't be going out in public. But then for the rest of us, if we're not sick, we can't always be isolated. Like, that's my only, like, what are we going to do? Like, they're like saying people shouldn't touch each other. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Like, I'll try not to touch anybody, but sometimes you have to grab something from somebody. What are you going to do? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even ATMs, I think people are afraid to touch ATMs now.
You know what we saw? We saw people walking around with hand wipes. Like, they are walking around with these big things of hand wipes, and they're like wiping everything they touch. I'm like, well, I don't know. You can try, but good luck.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, I don't have another computer open. I didn't even tweet this.
Okay.
Do you have any comments on your side that you can see from people?
I can check and see. I haven't seen anybody commenting on this particular video, but was there anything else that you wanted to share on the topic? Because I wasn't trying to take it off course.
No. I think that's all I had to say with the changing medical procedures. I thought we would maybe let you talk a little bit about.
Oh, the LP candidates?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was having a really hard time trying to figure out like who I would vote for in the primary, because in California, I'm not sure how it is in your state, but in California, when you're registered for a certain party, you are given a ballot with those options. I guess if you go to your polling place, which I didn't want to do, I vote by mail, you can request, if you're a member of the Libertarian Party or Democrat, or I guess another party, you can request a ballot from a different party. But the Republican Party and I think the Green Party have made it where no, you can only vote for the people if you registered for that party, you can only vote Republican in this way. So to be honest with you, like I know voting for a Libertarian presidential candidate in the primary is just a vote of confidence. I just didn't know who to give my vote of confidence to because I remember Gary Johnson. That was he made a big splash and I liked him. But with this new group of people, I wasn't really familiar with anybody, to be honest. And when I started reading a lot of them, some of them just seemed a little off. Like that, there was one of them, he's like a performance activist. And I was like, I liked Jo Jorgensen because she just seemed kind of like she had some good ideas and she seemed generally libertarian, maybe not extremely on the anarchist side, but she seemed okay. Like, so I liked, she had a web page and I kind of read some of her policies and I liked.
Would you like to share her webpage? Because I'll just be honest, I don't know much about her.
Yeah, I mean, you can comment on it and tell me what you think about like her stances, but since I wasn't really sure, like I can just share it and I'll just tell you that's what made me come up with my little decision at the end. Okay. Not that we even have to, are we in screen share now?
Okay. Not yet. Oh, now we are.
Okay, so I'll make it big. So I just kind of, she said that she just said that she wanted to reduce, spending, neutrality and peace. Like I liked what she said about not getting involved in foreign wars, but, making sure that we stayed secure within our own country. With healthcare, it sounded like she was just general of the road. Like she expressed similar libertarian, like I haven't, this is not something I have not heard before. I thought that wasn't too bad. I kind of like what she said on the environment because she pointed out like, yeah, we want to be careful, but I think that tech companies could do this. I don't think that we need the government to do this for us because they're just going to want us to pay for more taxes and they're going to give a contract to a company that'll probably go out of business in a couple of years, which has happened, by the way, in California, the whole solar panel business. I actually knew somebody that worked for one of those because they had all these, contracts where they were given money to go out and sell the solar panels. Plus, we're tired of those people calling us all the time. I liked what she said. And now, I don't know, Social Security, it was okay. Like, she was just like, it sounded like a general, most of her policies just seemed middle of the road libertarian, but I don't know, like, are you familiar with her at all? Like, do you
No, I'm not at all. The healthcare one went so fast. So
well, let me go back.
Say anything about repealing Obamacare completely?
Okay, let's see what she says. Okay, Republican and Democratic policies over the past 50 years are the reason the healthcare has become so expensive. Their latest proposal to fix healthcare will further micromanage your doctors and restrict your access to care while failing to solve the underlying problem. They differ only on whether this should be done by private insurance companies or government bureaucrats. This is the exact opposite of what needs to be done. We can reduce the cost of healthcare by 75% by allowing real price competition and by substantially reducing government and insurance paperwork. This will make healthcare affordable for Americans while also reducing, I don't know, this sounds kind of generic.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. This is not me talking against Jo Jorgensen. This is me about every politician I've heard from lately. Right after Obama, Obama's last time in office, everybody was talking about repealing Obamacare. And now nobody is talking about repealing Obamacare. And I don't understand why, not even libertarians.
I think it's just because, to be honest with you, like the Republicans, especially, they pretended like they really hated it. But I think at the end of the day, I think everybody decided, oh, we're kind of okay with it. Like it just meant that, certain medical entities would get contracts. And I think they kind of realized there was a profit to be made off of it, perhaps. Like I could be wrong, but that's kind of the vibe I got.
Well, if we want to reduce government intervention in healthcare, then we should stop propping up insurance companies by forcing people to
buy insurance.
Oh, yeah.
But can
So
we be honest? I don't think the Republicans ever wanted to reduce government intervention. Like people who believe that, I always laugh because they're big time crony capitalists. And I always laugh because I think of our local representative, Jerry Lewis, who used to be in Congress for years. And he took so many kickbacks from the aerospace industry and the military. And he had military. I laugh like when the local
yeah,
Republicans here would say, oh, yeah, he's so much small government. And we had this airport, Aya, where they had federal money that was supposed to be invested because it was going to become an international airport, and somehow that didn't work. And then now we have a Democrat, and it's never happened. And whatever happened to that money, and it's still not a functioning international airport. But everybody says, well, that's okay because we wouldn't want to hear the sound of the planes, and that's all they have to say about it. They're like, it's fine that it's just like a shipping airport, like. But it would have been nice. It would have, and to me, to this day, it really bothers me that that didn't become an airport because that would have been the thing that would have saved the San Bernardino economy. It would have been jobs. It would have meant people didn't have to travel 26, 27 miles to go to an airport. It would have been local. It would have alleviated congestion with LAX. It would have brought a lot of good things to our area, but people just keep saying, no, we don't want it. But a lot of people do want it. So I don't know. That's neither here nor
well,
there. But
yeah. So my point is, I have yet to see somebody just coming right out and saying, I want to repeal Obamacare. I want to repeal any federal law that requires an employer to pay for health insurance for an employee. I want to return the healthcare market to the marketplace so that doctors will not be able to charge very high fees because the only people paying those fees will be individuals. You understand what I'm
no, I
saying?
see what you're saying. It would be better to hear that. It sounds like maybe she's more of a, she's not, I don't know, maybe she's not a real libertarian. I just thought she seemed kind of good.
Yeah, no. This is not me against her. I've
Okay.
not seen anybody running against her who is any better on this. So that was just a general thing. Can we go down to education and taxes?
Okay, so the Department of Education has failed. In 40 years since the Department of Education was created, government spending on education has skyrocketed, while the quality of education has declined, which is similar to what I was saying about Prop 13 that they want to pass. Students used to be able to work their way through college and graduate debt free. As president, I will work to eliminate the Department of Education and return control of education to where it belongs, the parents, teachers, and the students. So
Okay, yeah, she's going against the Department of Education, but what about student loans? Is that where they come from?
well, yeah, kind of. The
I,
whole
I,
student loan thing, can we really forgive all the student loans? So like when people say we
no,
can
no,
do
no, no,
that,
no. I'm not saying forgive any of them.
yeah,
Uh, the student loans were loans that were made by private companies. Those
yeah.
private companies need to be paid back. But what I'm saying is, can we just stop offering student loans that are backed by the government?
Yeah, we could make them private. So do you want me to share what she says about taxes or?
Yes.
Okay. Taxes are never voluntary. They are always paid under the threat of punishment. If you fail to pay what the government says you owe, you can be fined, have your wages garnished, assets seized, go to prison. Voting for more government spending inevitably leads to higher taxes. It sounds like she just wants to reduce it, but I don't think she's talking about anything really
Yeah, no,
grandiose.
okay, this is what, it's just like that education thing. The education one made you think that she was going to say she was going to do away with government loans, but then she never said anything about that. This one, she says the taxes are theft, basically, which I agree with. But then instead of saying, if I were president, I would work tirelessly to get rid of the IRS and to repeal the amendment that allows federal income taxation. Instead, she says she wants to slash federal spending. So
Yeah.
slashing federal spending will not do anything to save the taxpayer from taxes.
Nope, it won't. Like you just could cut one program. I'll take us out of screen share now.
Okay, yeah, no, it's not about her. It's just most people are like that. They
Yeah.
have stuff that just doesn't make any sense if you think about it.
Yeah, it doesn't. You're absolutely right. I just was trying to find a candidate that wasn't some
Yeah,
sort
no,
of,
I don't know. I don't have another one. I don't have anybody to offer you that's better than her. So,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, she seemed okay,
yeah,
but I want to look again and look at the other ones. I just thought some of them were a little bit more generic than her, and I thought, well, she has been endorsed before. She did run as
yeah.
the Libertarian VP before, so I thought, well, she seemed interesting. She seemed to have some experience.
Well, yeah, no, I don't have anybody better to offer. So you did good. It's okay. It's just I wish somebody would just stand up and say all the right stuff.
Yeah, well, I think Austin Peterson did, but it sounds like maybe it was too good, and
Yeah,
Gary
he's
Johnson was a little too starstruck with himself.
yeah, he's never, Austin Peterson was so hurt by what happened that I don't think he'll ever even want to rejoin the Libertarian Party, and they hate him, and I don't know why.
Well, probably because he's a little bit more principled than they are. I hate to say it. I don't know. And I don't really understand that libertarian group. Like, I like a lot of the ideas of libertarianism, but a lot of people in that group, they sound pretty judgmental. And I thought libertarians weren't supposed to be that way.
Yeah, they have cutthroat competition against each other. So I did have one more topic, but I mean, again, if there are any comments, we can talk to the people who are
I can
commenting.
see if there's another comment. Let me check. I don't see anybody at the moment, but I do have to say, even though I voted for her, not feeling like real super excited, I
Yeah.
still think she was better than all the Democrats running right now.
Oh,
I can't
sure. I'm
say,
sure. I'm
yeah,
sure.
I can't say anything good about them. This is, I'm sorry, like you
Yeah.
have Donald
Yeah.
Trump, then you have the
Yeah.
Democrats all fighting each other, and then you have some lukewarm. I wish there was somebody better. That's all I can say.
Yeah. 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 I wasn't saying that she was any worse than anybody else. So
No, no, no. I don't feel like there's any options this time, to be honest. Like, that's just my opinion.
yeah, I'm not excited about anybody. So okay, nepotism.
Mhm.
Now again, in the same way that I wanted to discuss the medical situation with the flu in terms of the system and not just one doctor or one issue. I want to talk about nepotism in terms of how we look at the employment system and also the system for ownership of businesses.
Okay.
What do you know about nepotism?
Well, I know nepotism is where if you're related to someone or if you are have a close friendship with someone that you can promote them in business. But throughout the history of the world, nepotism hasn't always been a bad thing because sometimes you can use nepotism. Like, let's say you're a leader and you have a brother like friendship with a certain person that you trust over an advisor that your father trusts, you could appoint that person. So nepotism's not always a bad thing, like because families can promote people within their family to a business or if you're in government. But nowadays nepotism's frowned upon because it's considered giving an opportunity to someone you know over a stranger, so to speak.
Right. And of course, that's kind of crazy because in a world, it's not crazy when we're talking about people having power over other people's money, but in a world in which families owned businesses, whether the father of the family maybe owned a farm and he had all his sons and daughters working on that farm and uh, gave them jobs and kept them alive and kept their families alive and left each of them a share of the farm, after he died and whatever. It doesn't sound really crazy to expect that people would leave all of that in the family, does it?
No, it's perfectly normal, and it's a better system because if you allow a family to have a business to give like the shares of the business to the family, you're allowing them to provide for themselves and they don't have to go out in the world to seek their own living. I mean, you can if you want to, but if a family wants to remain within themselves and promote people with their own family, that's not a bad thing. They worked to make their money. They
Right.
worked hard. Nobody else
Yeah.
is
So
invested in that.
right, exactly. It's when the ownership belongs to a certain person that that person should be allowed uh, to choose to give parts of the business or employment with the business to whoever he wants to. And a lot of times that will be people he likes, which include his family and friends. Okay. So where did that all go wrong? And where did nepotism start to seem like a bad thing? Well, it
I would
started,
say around, sorry, go ahead.
well, it started, I think, with corporations, don't you think? Because ownership of the corporation isn't in the hands of the people who run the corporation.
Nope.
But you were going to say something else. So what were
I
you
was
going
gonna say, I remember in history when we talk about like Andrew Jackson, I know like they frowned upon his form of nepotism and they called it the spoil system because he gave too many positions in government to friends and family, and a lot
Okay,
of
because
people,
that's government. You know, again, I
yeah,
wanted to make a distinction between government and not government.
yeah,
So, yeah, anytime that you have power over things that do not belong to you, and government is always having power over things that do not belong to it, because government is not supposed to own anything. Okay.
no, definitely not.
Okay. So, but when we're talking about business, the place where businesses started to talk about nepotism was when businesses became publicly held. So the owners of the business were the public who bought stock, but the people running the business weren't the people holding the stock.
No, definitely not.
So then jobs could be given as spoils. And if it spoiled the business, the people who would lose would be the stockholders, not the people running the business, because they would have no skin in the game.
Hmm.
Okay, so nowadays, you know, I mean, there are even nonprofit corporations, you know, they're just called nonprofits. And they do all sorts of things, including take care of bonobos. And sometimes at meetings of these nonprofits, people talk about nepotism, but you have to understand that bonobos grow up in families. And if somebody raises a bonobo and has children who grew up with that bonobo, uh, those children are in a better position to understand the situation than just somebody from off the street who ends up working for the nonprofit. But terms such as nepotism are thrown around because there's no ownership.
Hmm.
So actually, ownership is when you lose ownership of the business that you work for, you lose the opportunity to control anything that happens with the business while you are alive and after you die.
Wow. It doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah. But I mean, even if you see what's happened in higher education, there was a time about in the 70s where if two faculty members on a, you know, in a certain department, if they happened to fall in love and get married, one of them would have to quit their job because there was an anti-nepotism policy in in that university.
Ugh, that's ridiculous. So you couldn't have like a couple like that wanted to be history professors. That person could have been, both of them could have been teaching for 20 years, but let's say they formed a relationship and that summer one of them has to quit. It wouldn't matter that they had made that contribution. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it was ridiculous. It was wrong and it was changed. But the thing that it changed to is also not okay. So let me tell you what happened in the 90s, not the 70s, but in the 90s.
Hmm.
The 90s, you have two body problems. Now, if a department wants to hire a professor, let's say he's a very top-notch professor in his field, and that professor happens to be married to another person who is a lesser person in that same field, the department ends up having to offer jobs to both people, both spouses, in order to lure the better known one to the department. What do you think of that?
That doesn't seem right, because what if there's many different applicants? One is more qualified, then there's another person. Let's say there's two positions and there's only two positions. Are they going to disqualify somebody that might be more qualified than that person that is married to that person? That doesn't make any
Right.
sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But
And
you
I
see,
didn't even know that was a thing. That's interesting.
that is a thing. And I don't even understand how that worked out. When did they change the nepotism policy? Because while I don't agree with the other nepotism policy either, I don't agree with the thing where if they fell in love and wanted to get married, they couldn't get married and stay in the department. I think they should be able to, because each of them got their job honestly, based on their credentials. And, you know, but on the other hand, for a person who is more desirable for the department to be able to get another person hired who might be less desirable than some of the other applicants, that does not seem right.
No, it doesn't. Wow. That is so interesting.
So this is, again, a change in the system. The systemic way in which we look at things has changed over the years. And to me, it's not the specific cases of one person or another, but the way that the system keeps changing that worries me.
Just the changes over time. They're not changes for the better. They say everything's a change for the better, but maybe sometimes it's a change for the worse.
Right. And to me, that is very similar to what happened with antibiotics. I agree that antibiotics were being prescribed way too often, way too much during a certain period. But then to allow people to maybe die when they could have not died just because you have a different antibiotics policy also doesn't make sense. And in both cases, I think it's a matter of, instead of looking at the situation and seeing what it really is, they allow a policy to decide everything the same way, you know?
Yeah, we shouldn't let policies like dictate individual cases. Like, we should look out at things on a case by case basis. We can't have a blanket policy for every single thing. Perhaps that's the issue.
Yeah, so right now people are talking about developing a virus against the coronavirus, a vaccine. You know, they're talking about developing a vaccine. And there are some issues with that. First of all, the coronavirus is changing. There are now 2 strains of it. How is a vaccine going to help? And secondly, if we look back at the reduction in mortality that happened around the time of the end of World War II, I'm not sure that it's the development of vaccines that did it and not the development of antibiotics.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very interesting topic.
Well, I've said all I have to say on all of these topics. So if you have anything else that you'd like to talk about or add to this, I'm all ears.
I wish I had a little bit more to add, but at the moment, I guess all I'm going to say is about the Libertarian candidates is that I hope that by the convention, there's somebody that really stands out that can give us confidence that maybe there's a third party option. That's the one thing I would like to say in closing.
That would be very nice. You know, at this point, I don't actually think any of us are under the delusion that Trump is not going to be reelected. I don't think there's much of a chance that he's not going to be reelected.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he is, and I hate to say it. I will just say this is going to make Democrats mad, but just kind of like what you were sharing with Tulsi, they decided to kind of snub her. And then within their own factions, they're fighting each other. I don't know what they're fighting each other about. I don't even know what being a Democrat really stands for anymore. Like, I'm not saying that being a Republican's all that in a bag of chips, but Democrats, all they ever do is talk about insular US politics. They don't talk about anything else. They don't talk about learning, culture, history, science, or anything else. They just talk about what Trump said that they don't like. And I find them kind of boring, to be honest with you, and very insular and not very interesting.
Well, I think Tulsi is actually kind of interesting. I'm not saying that I would.
Well, she might be. She seems different, though, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying I would support all of her policies, but you know, I had this run-in with and again, I try not to troll. Okay. I know that other people have different belief systems from me. And I
Yeah.
try not to be, I have friends who are Democrats. I have friends who are Republicans. I have friends who are Libertarians, and I'm not trying to upset anybody. When I comment on their posts, I try to remember, hey, I'm on this person's page. I'm not going to say anything that would be really upsetting to them. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, there were a couple of my friends, and they were talking about how sad it is that Elizabeth Warren, uh, threw in the towel and she's not running anymore. And she, of course, because she's such a true blue, wonderful person, she's supporting Biden. She is endorsing Biden. And then they talk, but we need a woman president. And so let's hope that the next time we'll have a woman president. And I thought, well, you're Democrats and you want a woman president. Did you know that Tulsi is still running in the Democratic primary, and that she, in fact, got an electoral vote? So
Wow.
why didn't Elizabeth Warren, if she wants a woman president, why didn't she endorse Tulsi? Why did she endorse Biden?
Because to be honest, she's very centrist. Like, she may say things like, I'm really for this and that, but she's not like, not that I love all of Bernie Sanders' policies, but I think he makes a few more waves than she does. But she didn't endorse Tulsi because she wants to be part of the main party line. And I think Tulsi says some things that kind of make the Democrats like shake their heads, because she doesn't go along with the party line all the time. That's what it sounds like to me from the little I know about her.
Yeah, well, okay, but here's what my friends said. And not just one friend, but several of them. They said, Tulsi is crazy. She would never endorse. Yeah, that's what they said. And I'm not saying that I support Tulsi and everything, but
No, you don't have to, but really, okay, this is why I'm not a Democrat anymore. And I don't care who's offended by that. And I can say that. And I can tell you why I'm not a Democrat anymore. It's because of the comments like that. That's the reason. Democrat Party, you imploded yourself. You lost a lot of people in the last few years because of these. They said somebody was crazy. What was it that the Democrats used to say? That we build each other up and we don't talk bad about other people, and that we're so supportive, and then we don't like Donald Trump because he does that. But you just did the same thing to somebody who's on your side.
yeah, exactly.
You just did the same thing to somebody that's on your side. I can say that. I know you won't, but I can. They just did the same thing to someone on their side that they accused Trump of doing all day long.
Yeah. So that's why I'm not excited about this election at all. It's not that I'm a Trump supporter, but I see Trump winning. And on some level, I guess he deserves to win, because nobody has shown, that they have anything going for them, really.
Yeah, they haven't. And I don't love Trump. He says the most ridiculous things on the planet, but I'm also a little bit more balanced in how I view things. Like, when you look at what the Democrats are doing all the time, they're undermining themselves. They keep doing this and they keep saying, well, why don't we win? Why don't we win? It's because they're doing all the things that they accuse Trump of doing, but they do it better. They really are, like saying that people aren't smart, saying that people aren't like intelligent, saying calling people names. The Democrats used to be that we don't like that sort of thing, and that's what others do. But then you start talking to conservative people, and not that I'm a conservative, they're not like that at all. They're actually pretty nice people. They just have policies that I don't agree with personally, but they don't go on Facebook and call people crazy. They don't do that, but Democrats do that, and they block people. Like, that's kind of, there's something wrong if you're blocking someone on Facebook because they don't agree with you politically. You have some anger issue, maybe. I'm just gonna say that people can hate me for saying that. It's not your opinion, it's mine. Just to be clear.
To me, I know that these people, while they are individuals, are part of a pack also, and that somebody signaled to them it was okay to say stuff like this, because otherwise they would not.
It's not okay. And it's funny too, because Democrats have deviated, because they used to pretend like they were very upset when a few like conservative trolls would say similar things, but now it's okay for them, like a large number. In fact, there was an article recently about a man who was in the knitting community who he did something he thought he would never do. He went to a Trump rally because people kept telling him how hateful Trump supporters were. But then he started getting censored, I guess, on Instagram by fellow liberals, and he got tired of that. And he started to wonder why, like, why is it that I'm being censored by other liberals or blocked? But then I talk to Trump supporters and they don't do that to me. So he isn't a Trump supporter now, but he actually went to a Trump rally because he wanted to find out, are Trump supporters really as hateful as Democrats say they are? Not all the time. Sometimes they just have different opinions, and a lot of them voted for Obama.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I mean, so go ahead. Like they can do whatever they want to do. I don't think Tulsi's so bad. I actually thought that she had served in the military, and it seemed like she had more
she did.
anti-interventionist policy than Democrats. So why is that bad? It's not.
No, that's one of her better qualities, actually.
Yeah, that's actually something I did like about her. I don't know a lot about her. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't follow anything she was doing, but she seemed better than a lot of the Democrats. And I think where they're making a mistake is they just want mainline people. Like they keep promoting.
They're not letting her debate. I mean, that's how bad it is. They're just keeping her out of the debate. They just changed the rules. You know, the rules were supposed to be that if she got any electoral votes, that she would be allowed to be in the final debate or whatever. No, they changed it. They changed it just for her so that she wouldn't be allowed in.
Of course. But remember, they did the same thing. Like everybody was suppressing having any of the third party candidates be in the presidential debate. So since our own national presidential debates will never let third party candidates in, Russia Today will sponsor a debate with the independent parties, and Russia Today will interview them. And then I think that was another reason that they were accusing Jill Stein of collusion, because she went on a Russian news program. But if the American news programs really don't let her on, or she's not allowed to come on a national debate, maybe that's why some third parties will talk to media entities that will actually give them a platform.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely.
And we're going to go back to this whole thing. I'm going to touch upon this again, the whole collusion thing. It has not been substantiated. What we had were a whole bunch of really dodgy ads on Facebook that didn't prove that anybody was colluding with the Russians. Like we have to be honest about that. Like that's another thing. I just see a lot of bad things coming out of this next election. And I think the Democrats are going to give Trump the election. Like, okay, let's make a prediction today. Trump's going to be reelected because of the Democrats' behavior. That's what I say. You don't have to say it, but I kind of.
Okay, well, I just want to share something about a meme. I know you don't like memes, but I saw a funny one. It was a picture of Putin, and he was saying that well, they wanted to intervene in the elections, but the elections are so chaotic that they don't think they can.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I don't want to put this off topic. I just don't think it was quite to the extreme that was made out to be. And that's why at the end of the day, Donald Trump wasn't impeached. He might say a lot of ridiculous things, but I don't think our standard of living or our way of life has been in dire jeopardy with him being president. I don't agree with his policies on how he treats immigrants, by the way, but a lot of those things were in place in the Obama years and previously, so we can't say that it's all him. There's a lot of things I don't like about him, but I don't really like the way that the Democrats approach it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Trump used to be a Democrat himself. He's not that different from the old school Democrats.
No, he's still very New Yorky, and he's into corporate welfare. Remember, he did the whole ad with Giuliani, and they were like, "Oh, corporate welfare, Giuliani's giving it out." That was a thing.
I think he's very funny. Stuff he says, the current thing is that he's saying that the whole coronavirus thing is a hoax.
I think he's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I don't know. I would be really like, I don't know why he says half of what he says. Occasionally he's funny. Most of the time, I just try to ignore him because honestly, I don't really like him that much. But here's the thing I don't get is that the Democrats, they claim to hate him, but they spend all day like obsessing about him. And I have other things I want to do with my day.
Right.
Like for instance, here's something I want to do. I want to learn about other cultures. And the Democrats never talk, like people that are always talking about Trump, they never really talk about anything outside of the US anymore. Did they ever watch any of our live streams with Amanda Jones? Do they really know what's going on with the, they're always talking about, I don't know, domestic politics. I'm bored. Like,
Yeah.
why don't
Well,
you?
I'm looking forward to having Amanda Jones on in the near future. But tonight, what I'm looking forward to is you're telling me all about Magnificent Century, which tells about the history of the Ottoman Empire.
Yes, it does, and it's very fascinating. I'm learning a lot of new things, and there are fictional subplots in the story, but it's interesting to see. I'll share a little bit more about that tonight.
Okay, very good. I think we've covered pretty much all the problems of the world in one sitting, don't you think, Julia?
I think so. Like you had a little bit more background about the medical part, like you're not a medical, but you know a little bit more about these things than I do, and I'm just sharing some of my takes, like about why I'm not a Democrat anymore. And I think it
Well,
has to be said. And you know what I
yeah.
like? I'll just say this before we leave. I like that I'm not scared of the Democrats who tried to shame me into not voting for Hillary Clinton. I like that basically everything that they said has been proven wrong. I'm glad because I'm so sick of that behavior, and it's good. Let them keep doing it. Let them keep
Yeah,
doing
well, they're going to reap what they have sown.
Yeah. Well, good. Why don't you just be, I don't know. These are my opinions. They're not Aya's opinions. So if you want to know why people aren't Democrats anymore, that's why. Just saying.
Okay. Well, hopefully we are going to find a libertarian candidate that suits all of us and who is not just against taxes, but is
Yeah.
also willing to do away with the IRS. I would love that. Wouldn't you?
That would be great. Like maybe we can talk to some of your friends in the Libertarian Party and we can find out more about who will be at the convention. I would like to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that we will in the coming weeks. And I look
Okay.
forward to talking to you at 8:45 p.m. my time tonight, which is 6:45 p.m. your time, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll see you then.
I'll see you, Aya. Bye.
Bye.